Nanowhere. By Chris Howard. Chapter 1, Joe and Al. Dr. Ernest Straff wasn't surprised when the jump troopers tackled him in his dining room, and he was only mildly shocked when they stuffed his head in a bag, zip-tied his wrists and ankles, dragged him into a clearing in the forest next to his house, and cabled him up into a hovering gunship. It was just, he had always thought, or hoped, or wished he would have more time. In 716 seconds, Straff was counting, his captors had him over the New Hampshire line, crossing western Mass at a shallow angle that would take him into upstate New York. He pieced together the direction from their post-abduction chatter, most of it from one helpful voice cutting through the back roar of the engines, a voice deep with round tones and a slight Minnesota lilt, curiously pointing out the Mass Pike to one of his squad mates. Interstate 90 ran east-west across Massachusetts, dipped south a bit in the middle, before it headed into Boston. The ex-Minnesotan was on Straff's left, so they must be just north of the Pike, heading west. Nothing but cold Atlantic to the east. If the pilot kept a fairly straight heading, they'd cross into New York, south of the capital, heading toward the Catskills. Straff caught all of this in the span of a few seconds. As soon as the trooper had a few dozen words out, he stopped abruptly as if he had seen another of his team give him a finger drawn across the throat. This left another few hundred seconds for Dr. Straff to blindly think about his fate. The black fabric bag rubbed his nose and ears. The gunship's engines threw off a steady high-throttle chainsaw whine, with an accompanying fuselage vibrating rumble, and his ears hurt as he continued to listen for distinguishable sounds out of the dense storm of noise. Kaffir Lang jumped the curb at 30 km, ground the handrail against the Earth's gravity in a sideways scoot, and dropped a meter into a concrete plane at the edge of the Northampton skate park. She swung her backpack around, charcoal black against smooth brown skin and a flare of tight neon green top and shorts. She lowered the pack to the ground as she rolled up to another skater, Alexander Scholler, a tall redhead. Plywood ramps and half-pipes ringed the central concrete basin like bygone-era shipyard scraps. The park was clean, walled with 60-foot pines, and set back 20 meters off Atlantic Avenue, prime real estate that the owner had been obliged to give up in some cloudy property tax exchange deal with the New Hampshire town. A single-lane dirt track ran alongside the laser-leveled concrete pad, weed-choked and potholed. It headed into the forest, lost in overgrowth 30 meters beyond the padlocked gate. The forest was haunted. Everyone knew that, but the tax deal apparently included a do not bother the skaters clause, and so as long as you stayed this side of the gate you weren't likely to run into any of the rumored specters, alleged oversized arachnids, poisonous fog, or any of the other blood-drinking, mine-emptying, acidic saliva-spitting denizens of the wood. Kaffir didn't notice the haunted forest. She smiled at Alex because she felt their world blaze into existence like a force field that expanded around them, widening to encompass the real world, but with special properties, like the ability to tune out the real world while they were together. When her parents sighed, "Off in your own little world, Kaffir," she would say, "Actually, it's quite large as I want it to be." The private world she shared with Alex always appeared when they met. They had been friends about a year, but it felt like 5 times that. And they'd taken it so far, that for fun and the delight of annoying others they pretended to be married. That was the act they usually put on while in their world, a comfortably married couple with loud staged greetings and grotesquely sweet nicknames. It threw everyone around them into uncomfortable amusement, or sickness, sometimes both. Alex waved off another boarder, turned to Kaffir, puckering up lips, she said shortly in mock reproach, followed his lips-scrunching expression, but turned her head at just the right time so that he planted his kiss on her cheek. "How was your day, dear?" Kaffir asked brightly in the role of the dutiful wife, something she recognized, mocked, could role-play, but would never be. Classes had let out half an hour ago, and the day had been long. The first word that shot into Alex's mind went right to his mouth. Blistering. She gave him a 1950s housewife tilt of her head, plastic smile, mime taking off an apron and hanging it up. "Shall I fix your drink, dear?" He raised an eyebrow, pleasantly surprised. "Double, if you can." Anticipating this, Kaffir dug out 2 gleaming red cans of Coke from her pack and heaved them. Alex caught one after the other like high-entropy bound raw eggs, popped open both, but drank at a civilized pace, alternating cans while he rolled back and forth on his board. Kaffir rifled through her pack again, pulled out a fat hardcover textbook. Being forced to lug around the ancient brick of paper probably covered her physical fitness requirements. She tilted her chin toward the Cokes. "Girls' locker room was out. Had to get some woodchopper to get them for me out of the boys'. I know it has to be Coke, but why?" She frowned, pausing a moment for his answer, and then rolled her eyes before he could come back with something. "And don't give me some shit-brain marketing slogan." He gave her a puzzled look instead, which slid off his face a second later as if he had slipped out of their world and into another. Then he was drifting in dreamy contentment, savoring the complex natural flavors, swirling in an engaging caramel-colored melange of high-fructose corn syrup and or sucrose. "It's the spice," he said slowly, almost in a trance. She looked coldly at his faraway look as if reading his thoughts. Solemnly whispering, "Arrakis. Dune. Desert planet." Alex picked up on the annoyance behind Kafia's frown, and explained, "Nothing else on this planet has anything like it. That unique flavor found only in genuine Coca-Cola." She gave his cheek a soft slide of her fingers, then pulled away, and slapped him, not quite gently. "Snap out of it." He blinked, finding his words. "Come on, it's required if you're going to fold space." "Right." She stretched out the one syllable. He sighed, dropped his shoulders, re-entering their world by blinking a few times. He shrugged at the obvious. The spice must flow. How else is the Emperor going to maintain control over his 10,000-year-old interplanetary feudal hierarchy? She gave him a playful shove, and he rolled away. "When you put it like that." Alex laughed, upended the can in his right hand. "First, the spice. Second, I like to burp when I skate." He tossed the empties toward the recycle bin, and shot off the ledge, plummeting into the concrete bowl. One Coke can went in, centered over the bin's opening. The second went wide, and would have overshot the bin. Kafia dropped her textbook, caught it between her knees, reaching to juggle the can for half a second before deflecting it into the recycler. And her gaze never left him. Alex Scholar was a wiry skater with hazel eyes that bugged out and shifted color with the changing light. He liked this effect, and made a habit of moving around a lot, which annoyed just about everyone. His hair. Well, his mother thought she could cut hair as well as any barber, and so he usually sported a horribly uneven cut, probably not entirely her fault. His thick bristly orangey red hair looked like someone had smeared his head with marmalade, the kind with extra shredded citrus rind. It always stood on end, even when it grew out, as if he was walking around with his tongue in a powered light socket. Any hint of a tan he'd acquired over the summer had already faded, but his skin was so freckled that it appeared splotchy brown from a distance. Kafia Lang was nearly his opposite, female, as dark brown as he was light, as pure a shade of color as he was freckled, as poised as he was loose and jumpy. She had shoulder-length wavy bundles of peat brown hair that she did various things with. Today, she had gathered 24 tiny braids into one thick knot at the base of her neck, to counter his way too baggy purple camo shorts. Where the hell was he planning to blend in with random leafy patterns of lilac, lavender and violet? She wore a close-fitting lime green top and shorts, hoop earrings, and cycling gloves with the fingers cut out. Some people made fun of her name, not to her face. 100 variations on coffee: cafe latte, Colombian supremo, French roast, iced coffee, decaf, half-cef, espresso, espresso. Alex called her Joe. Kafia turned away from the skate bowl, took a seat and stuck her face into her schoolwork, ignoring the laughing of the other skaters, the occasional grunt and scream of someone eating it, and then more laughing. She joined the other skaters in glaring suspiciously up at the roar of some military aircraft that cruised overhead, right above the treetops. The second gunship to go over in the last 5 minutes. She managed to finish her trig homework, got through a chapter on the early battles of the First American Civil War, and then relaced her skates, all before looking up to find the sky had turned pale and the few skaters and lurkers had all gone home. Alex was still hopping embankments and rolling around in zigzags and sudden rotates like a marble in a wobbling bowl. That's how he did his thinking. She put everything away and stood, stretching her arms as she rolled forward. The sun hadn't yet set, but it was at that dim undecided point where it tried to linger at the door, fingers clutching at the frame, before night shoved it into the hall and locked it outside until morning. Kafia glanced at the sky through the trees and smiled to herself at the thought that Alex wouldn't call this night yet. She braked hard at the bowl's rim when she heard the dull tap of wheels on pavement and someone chuckling. Kafia and Alex weren't alone anymore, and although the newcomers were smiling, there was nothing friendly about them. The lights were very bright in one of the deepest, darkest, surgical departments in Building Blue of the Rost Institute, one of the half-ring of towers jutting from the landscaped hills and forest in upstate New York. Body-armored soldiers roamed the darkening grounds of the institute, teams of them on parking patrol, vehicle sniffing. Others were checking badges at the front gates and waving through the first wave of departing commuter traffic. Deep in the heart of Building Blue, a man's gloved hands inspected the skin and stitching around the data jacks he had installed the week before. The noetic surgeon stepped back from his scope, rubbing the arched pink grooves in the skin around his eyes. "Nicely healed, sir. She's ready to go." Dr. Greenlee looked up from the tablet's screen with the paper his tech staff had worked up for the procedure. He pocketed his reading glasses. "Enough in place to get into her memory flow?" "Yes, sir." The mechs embedded in Juntramani's brain were next-gen neural retiforms, far more intrusive and real driving than G-cognitives, soul yoke stabs, or the deeper versions of these, modified and enhanced in U.S. Army labs. How long before her body rejects them? The surgeon's lips curled in to hide his mouth behind a stiff doughy line. His lips popped out after a pause. I'd guess 2 weeks. The chairman of the Rost Institute tilted his head a little, his gaze pinned to the surgeon, not quite smiling. Not much of a guesser. That long? Guessing, but keeping it cautious, sir. There are physiologicals to consider, but I'll stand by the 2 weeks, he said, nodding firmly. And after rejection? They won't come out easy. He shrugged. Probably kill her. Greenlee straightened, pausing half a second over the question of how much sympathy he needed to show, and nodded at his surgeon without showing anything that looked sympathetic. Very well. Keep her on nutrition. I need her healthy enough to question. By question, it was clear he meant torture. The surgeon grimaced. Yes, Dr. Greenlee. The chairman studied the man a moment, and then showed his teeth in something that wasn't really a smile. Well done, Mitch. I'm off to pick up an old friend at the landing. Let me know when Miss Dromany wakes.